Okay, everybody, so this is step 1 of how to begin your clay assignment, your first project in clay. You're going to get your clay as a 1.5 pound chunk in cube form. After a few minutes of handling the cube, you'll notice that you may have some clay residue already built up on your fingernails, under your fingernails, and even on your cuticles. That is normal and to be expected. You can cut down on the mess a little bit by working on top of an old newspaper, or you can even work on top of an old piece of fabric, like an old bed sheet or old bath towel. Be mindful of dried clay crumbs that you'll see develop. Don't let too many of those accumulate and throw them away. I'll talk more about why that's important later. Also, I'm going to provide you with a plastic cup. You're going to want to fill that up with water, not fully, just maybe half full or a quarter full. And that's going to be very helpful in maintaining moisture in your clay, specifically maintaining plasticity of your clay. This is a self-hardening air-dry clay, and it is prone to drying out with neglect and too much overworking by our dry hands. So you're going to constantly dunk your fingertips in water. And when I say constantly, I mean constantly. You're doing this often. Okay, so be very aware of that. Keep that water handy. Your cube, may have some imperfections. It doesn't matter. It's going to be shaped into a bowl anyways. But before we start shaping it into a bowl, I'm going to ask that you take the plastic knife I've provided you and cut off a small section of that initial cube. That section is going to be reserved for pieces of clay we're going to add under the bowl to be a foot. And the section I'd like you to cut off is about a quarter of the cube. So I recommend taking your plastic knife and marking out the halfway point on your cube and then half of that. Now that knife is just good for marking out. You can see it's not going to cut through my clay. I have another tool that will do that for me. It's called a clay cutting wire tool, and it's a piece of skinny metal wire attached to 2 handles. So this is a store-bought tool, very expensive. We're going to make our own live in class together. I've provided you the materials, and I just ask that you wait to construct that until I properly show you how to do that during our next class session. But it's going to get the job done. And it will mimic the tool I just had a few seconds ago. And you'll be able to slice through your cube like you're slicing through a block of cheese. So again, mark out the halfway point and then mark out half of the half so that you're cutting off just a small section of your cube. It's basically 25%. You're cutting off 25% of that cube, 1/4. And we're going to reserve that for another bag, which I'll talk about later. Now, in cutting your clay, that may expose some spots, some discoloration. It's going to look like black mold. I promise you it's not. It's a discoloration from another clay body, because remember, our clay vendors mixing up a variety of different clay bodies in their factory, and sometimes there's a little cross-contamination between clay bodies. No big deal. I'll talk more in another video about the next step.